fun to do all the flashy Instagram, like spinning, whatever, flying dragon techniques like that. That's a lot of fun. But if you don't have the foundations, right, then it's kind of meaningless. So the foundations is the stuff that would carry you through like a street self-defense encounter. It'll still be there, if you're growing older and into your late 40s and your athleticism is fading, you can still do a shrimp. You can still do, guard work. You can still do stuff that is more available than some of the more athletically based movements. So with that in mind, side mount, some basic principles we want to observe here. Again, if my arms are outside of inside position, that is not good for a variety of reasons. It's not good for me in the sense that I can't get his chest away from mine. I have to rely on this, and this is not very effective when he has these sorts of grips around me. The contest is not even really a contest, right? The other thing is my arm is now vulnerable. He can start sneaking out, to go for armbar, to go for whatever else, or key lock, or whatever submission he's going to go for. My arms are now isolated and vulnerable, so I need to, at the very least, protect them. I can't hang out for a long time here deciding how I'm going to get underneath, so I need to just get this underneath his chin, preferably, on his throat. And this one needs to be down, wedged against his hip. They also need to be framed. So if you come up for a second, they shouldn't just be collapsed and in here. They should be strong frames. I should create angles here that I can hold him off of me, right? So if he's back here, I'm not just allowing him to drive his weight down and my arms are inside. I'm creating frames to keep him back. I also want to de-incentivize him from dropping his weight. If I'm putting my pressure into his throat, well, he can alleviate that. One easy way is just to come back off of my forearm, right? And that's what I want him to do. I want to convince him that it's not good to keep dropping his weight down. So driving my pressure into his throat is one way I can use this. All right, so that's all my setup, my defense up here. But that's not enough to get him away from me completely. I can't just rely on bench pressing him off. So I'm going to bring my lower body into play here. I'm going to bring my feet up and I'm going to stomp down and push my hips up. And I'm creating this space behind my low back here. That space is so that I can drop my hips sideways now, here onto my hip. And here I'm much more mobile, right? Even if he drops his weight down, I have the ability to squirm and kind of move. If I'm here and he drops his weight down, I can't move. I have more surface area against the mat. It's going to be harder to maneuver. So I create these frames. I'm bringing my feet up. I'm stomping down and pushing my hips up, dropping my hip into that space. I'm still using these frames and I'm inching back, hips, then shoulders, until I create enough space to bring this bottom leg between our bodies and ideally back to guard, right? Now, just a quick word about that, because that's all really easy to say. This is a hard move to execute in practice. So, if we're just fighting here, and go ahead and put a little bit of resistance on there, just put it, and I'm struggling, I'm pushing up, and he's moving. This is all creating movement. That part is good for me, right? What I don't want, the worst thing I can do is this. No, you got me. Like, I can't give up here. Even if it isn't a super smooth, like, I got to guard in one movement, that's okay. It can be a little bit ugly. It can be a little bit of a dogfight here where I'm pushing, I'm creating space, I'm dropping my head. Maybe he smashes me back down. Okay, I'm coming back up. And eventually, if I keep working at it, I get back to guard. So side mount escapes are tough. That's the take-home message here. But let's work those a couple of times. First with no resistance, and then I'll let you know we'll up the resistance a little bit, put some more work in. Questions on anything? No? Hands up. 1, 2. We've been going over side mount stuff, and I think that's a good thing to go back to, just to go over what we went over on Tuesday. The basics of side mount, right? Basics of side mount. I need frames on the inside. So I need this arm here against his throat, this arm here against his hip. And these are frames, if you come up for 1 second. These are an angle, and I'm keeping some rigidity to my arms. So in other words, I'm not just placing them here and letting him collapse them down. I'm keeping his weight somewhat off of me. And this is just the basic setup. But to escape from side control, I want to bring my feet up and go down. Weight on the ground. Bring my feet up here. I'm popping my hips up, and I'm creating the space behind my low back so that I can drop my hips into it, or I can turn sideways. Now I'm going to start to move shoulders and hips until I've figured I have enough space to clear this bottom leg and bring it between us to get back to guard. So that's kind of the ideal side mount escape, although in practice, it might look more like I'm bumping my hips up, dropping here, he's pushing me back down. I do the same thing again, several attempts. Maybe I get here, move myself back. The point is, it can look uglier than that kata-esque, single movement escape. A second thing that we've looked at is an alternative. So the prevailing wisdom is I turn towards him to escape. I have to get my body oriented this way. Since most people know that's what the person on bottom wants to do, they will really drive shoulder pressure here and force me this way. So an alternative is I can accept that force and I can start to drive this arm down, use the C grip here to push his hand and wrist down this way, dish my hips away from him, and drive this leg between the two of us and put it into the crook of his elbow so that I've switched my grip here, grab the outside of his wrist, and I'm pushing here to take his shoulder pressure away. There's a number of different attacks you can do with this. So you can switch to an arm bar, you can switch to triangle, but for right now, for our purposes, while we're first learning this, we're here, driving this wrist down, dishing our hips this way, putting our shin between his arm and me, pushing away, and then a lot of people will just get nervous that you have this control, they back up, and great, now I'm back to guard. A third technique, and I'm just going over these three because we've gone over a couple of these so far, so reviewing. But here, it's going to be the same setup as the first, but a slightly different approach to things. So I've got my base setup here to defend against side control. I'm going to bring my hands over this way and create a frame. So I'm taking this one away from his hip to create this frame here, and I'm pushing on his neck, popping my hips up, and this arm is going to drive under for the underhook, right? And I can't stay here for a long time because there's attacks he can do, darts and other things, so I can't stay here forever. But once I have this underhook, I'm going to bump my hips up again, and I'm going to turn all the way over onto my belly and get this arm around his leg. That's important because we're here, palm to palm, I push up, and I get this underhook. If I don't get to this leg and I just keep this underhook here and I turn to my side, he can just come over and get knocked, right? So he just, that's not benefiting me. So, I go palm to palm here, drive my hips up to create this space to get this underhook, and then immediately I turn all the way over and get to this leg here, pull this in, bring my leg over, grab, and here, bring this knee over, grab his heel, beside his leg, and I'm pushing him over so I get my own pass in the side. So, we can go over that third one in a little bit more detail for those of you who have been here the last couple of weeks and gone over those first two. If this is your first time looking at those, let's start with that first basic escape. Hands framed here, one in the hip, one in the neck, bumping up, dropping my hip sideways, and scooting back into guard. If you've done those first two a couple of times, go to that third one. Sound good? Questions? All right, hands up. 1, 2.